President Trump is trying to silence his critics. The president is threatening to revoke security clearances of some top intelligence officials who have questioned and criticized Mr. Trump's refusal to confront Russia. The White House says the former intel chiefs have, quote, politicized and in some cases monetized their public service.
So is what we are seeing here from President Trump really the art of the distraction? In some ways, it's very, very small, and otherwise, it's potentially pretty big. A senior White House official tells CNN the president is more than comfortable with how this debate is playing out and is in no rush to actually decide on revoking those security clearances. So is this just a distraction from the whole Russia news conference? Or, as Maggie Haberman suggested to us a short time ago, is this perhaps a distraction from the news about Michael Cohen, his personal attorney, and the tapes that we now know exist of conversations between the two?
And there she is, Maggie Haberman herself, the aforementioned political analyst and White House correspondent for the New York Times. Maggie, great to have you. Okay, so what took him so long to attempt to revoke these security clearances? I mean, President Trump doesn't like people going on television like James Clapper has, like John Brennan has, and criticizing what they see in terms of his complete lack of respect and denigration of the intel community. So they have criticized him publicly. So now it feels that this is punitive and retribution for that, and that he might revoke their security clearance. What else is going on behind the scenes?
Well, this actually is what we were talking about before, is what's a distraction versus just him popping off. This is actually a distraction. This is something that Sarah Sanders went to the podium, was reading from this. To the extent that this White House plans things out, this was something that was planned. What took him so long is the fact that this is not realistic. I mean, some of the people who he's talking about don't have active clearances, number one.
Comey and McCabe.
Correct, number one. Number two, it's not going to stop people. He doesn't get to wave a wand and make this go away very quickly. This is something that the White House knows will get us talking, will fill headline space, and that to the extent that they can squeeze out other things, that is what they're trying to do. But it is, to your point about very small and very big, this is not a small thing to have a president suggesting retribution for political criticism in this way. It is this leveling out, this flattening that he does with everything, where everything is the same, everything is political. Nobody can have a motive other than good, bad, up, down about Donald Trump. And there is also that sort of that mirroring aspect to this, where he takes criticism that has been leveled against him or his administration and he puts it back somewhere else. The criticism of the security clearance process of his White House has been extensive. The fact that his daughter and son-in-law have security clearances has been a huge issue, and the fact that both of them have been accused of monetizing their positions in the White House. So I was really struck by that language from Sarah Sanders, because it has been applied to his own family over and over again.
You have it if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's play the short version of that, just so we know what we're talking about right now.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe. The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances.
All right, so this happened. She was reading from that sheet. So as you say, this was a planned escapade, a planned distraction.
And we're talking about it.
We are. And we were discussing the fact that we thought it was to distract from Russia, which, of course, the news conference was more than 1 week ago. But Maggie, in our last episode of New Day, and by that I mean 8 minutes ago, before the top of the hour here, you said you think it might have something to do with Michael Cohen. You were part of the New York Times team that broke the Michael Cohen tape recording story last Friday.
It was Friday. Feels like it was 7 weeks ago.
Remind us exactly what was in that, and update us then on what the president's so concerned about here.
Sure. So this is a recording that was among the things seized or found on one of the devices seized from Michael Cohen in this FBI raid in April. Our understanding is this is the only one of substance about issues involving Trump and women and the National Enquirer, and that is what they were talking about on this tape. It is a brief recording. It is less than 2 minutes long. The conversation cuts off before it's finished, but they are very clearly talking about payments being made to a woman named Karen McDougal, who had an alleged decade-old affair with then businessman Donald Trump, and payments that she had gotten from AMI. They were discussing acquiring the rights to her story. As we understand it, I don't think that Donald Trump was planning on publishing that story when he acquired her rights, so you would have to assume that it was just to put it on a shelf. We've been told two different things. There are additional recordings of the two that have nothing, that are of no substance or significance at all. And then there are just other recordings of Cohen either talking to people or talking to people about Trump. There are 12 recordings that were turned over to prosecutors. We don't know which ones they are. We would assume that the one we reported on Friday is among them, but we do not know.
And other than this being tawdry, is this legally damning?
So Trump's folks argue it is not legally damning, that basically this was not a reimbursement, that this was about a straight-out purchase, that there was nothing wrong there, that the problem is personal. The problem is not legal.
But I don't get that. A straight-out purchase of somebody's
silence. Well, right. I mean, even if you're acquiring the rights, again, Donald Trump was not about to put this in Trump magazine, right? I mean, this was not a story that he was going to publicize. So it's hard to imagine what other purpose he was acquiring these for, other than continuing to ensure that she would stay quiet. Their argument is that there's no legal issue. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a prosecutor, so I don't want to go that far. But there's a lot more that I think will be revealed as we go forward here.
This is actually what's really interesting to me here, because Rudy Giuliani claims it's exculpatory, yet you were also suggesting that this information is somehow so upsetting to President Trump that he's out there doing things like threatening war with Iran and threatening to revoke the security clearances of top intelligence officials, or at least that is what is coloring his mindset. So what is it exactly that has him so worried?
Number one, I think it's part of it. I don't think it's the only thing. I do think the Russia thing is still an aspect. Number two, I don't know that it's so much that I think he doesn't know what's on these tapes. I think he doesn't know. And so I think that with him, the unknown always becomes a little bit scary and a little concerning, and this is the unknown about things he was talking to his lawyer/fixer about. So I think that is a looming threat that he can't contain. One of the things that people involved in this entire issue have said repeatedly is that Trump's lawyers and Cohen's lawyers weren't necessarily going to know everything that was there, because these were not two clients who were going to just sit down and sort of unload with their lawyers and say, well, here's the spectrum. This is the menu of things it could be, for a variety of reasons. And so I think that for the same reasons that you would have advisors to Trump or to Cohen concerned about what could be there, I think Trump is going to share some of those concerns.
I have to get back to Sarah Sanders and Rand Paul's claim that part of the reason why the Intel chief's security clearances would be revoked is because they're monetizing their public service.
Right.
I mean,
we know this administration's very against
audacity. They're shocked.
They have those conversations at the Trump Hotel all the time.
That's right. And with Ivanka's meetings for her clothing line and her accessories line and her home goods line and her shoes line.
Right.
They are upset about monetizing public service. Emoluments, paging the emoluments clause.
I mean, look, this is, again, one of the ways that they have been pretty shameless about using the same things that they are accused of with reason that they get criticized for, and then trying to toss it back on other people. This is, again, one of those examples. I think that they realistically know this is not really going anywhere. And also, I think it was General Hayden who said on Twitter, okay, great, it's not going to stop you from talking. So there is the degree to which this is retribution or an act of attempted retribution or potential retribution from the White House is staggering. On any given day, President Trump does something that would have destroyed previous presidents, and that Trump's own supporters would have been furious with President Obama for, or President Hillary Clinton, or President
The blame
Bill Clinton.
America is the piece de resistance.
Right, but so I mean, this is
said it in French, by the way, which is
thank you. We're going to have to revisit that in a second. But this is another example of that. And again, given that the security clearances have been such a problem for this White House, I was really surprised to see them drive the car straight toward it.
Kushner, Rob Porter.
Right.
I mean, all of this stuff. You think of the problems that he's had and the people with whom it's been associated with, and now he's directing this on people like Michael Hayden.
Right. It does actually make me wonder whether there is some other issue looming with security clearances that we're not aware of, because sometimes when they do these distractions, that is a piece of it. I haven't heard anything like that, but it's certainly a possibility.
Very quickly, can you just explain the Rand Paul factor? So Rand Paul is the person who suggested this, we think, to President Trump. First of all, why does he want their security clearances revoked? What does Rand Paul have to say about it? And is he doing him a favor for a quid pro quo of some kind? Why? Or did he just like this idea?
I don't know enough about what Rand Paul would have wanted in terms of quid pro quo, but I do know that they have a pretty unique and in some ways surprising relationship. Remember, though, the supporters who Donald Trump went after initially in the primary were Rand Paul's father's supporters, Ron Paul's supporters. There is sort of a natural political alliance there, so this is not totally out of left field.
Rand Paul has an innate distrust, or at least a long-standing distrust of the security apparatus of the country. So there is that. there is a suggestion that Rand Paul's wavering on Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court pick, so maybe the president would make this gesture to get Rand Paul's vote. I'm not so sure that Rand Paul's vote is that hard to get. I'm not sure he needs Rand Paul's vote.
Right, and I'm not sure that there is something that they want in exchange. I think that Rand Paul may have actually just liked this idea, thought it was beneficial to the president, and they went from there.
Respect for secrets and classified information. There is also some irony here, correct? Because it was more than a year ago, I lose track of time, where the president in the Oval Office to Ambassador Kislyak and Foreign Minister Lavrov apparently divulged classified information provided to the Israelis. Now, he can do that. He's the president.
Right.
But it's still information that the intelligence community did not want out.
Nor did the Israelis.
Right. I mean, during the campaign, and this is continued into the White House, advisors were always very careful of what they told Donald Trump, the candidate, because they knew he had a penchant for turning around and repeating it. So there is an irony to how this is all playing out. But again, I don't believe this is a real, thought-out, meticulous proposal. I think this was something that got them through a news cycle.
We need to play you a bit of sound from the White House briefing room, where Sarah Sanders seems to have fully embraced her boss's notion that the investigation into Russia is a hoax. Listen to this.
The president is referencing the collusion component. Once again, the president has faith in the intelligence that suggests and maintain that Russia was involved in the elections. However, it's also important that same information concludes that it had no impact on the election, and that the president, again, would like to repeat that there was no collusion.
Now, just one thing. I mean, I think that we've all so, at this point, metabolized that it had no impact on the election. How do we know that? How do we know who read a fake news Facebook post and didn't vote a certain way?
Right, we don't. Although I actually didn't think that what she said was that particularly out of line with what she has said before, and what other supporters of the president have said to try to make his sort of blunt, boiled down to the bone, no collusion, it's a hoax thing sound more complex and more detailed. I think, look, there is no way of knowing. This was a perfect storm election and a very narrow election. So in that kind of an election, all kinds of things are factors.
Of course.
And
I'm
so
saying that we keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. But there was no effect on the election.
I don't know that anybody's giving. At this point, I actually don't think that that's the case. I don't think people are just sort of taking that at face value. I think that the problem has been as we cover this administration, because they say so many things and so much has to be fact-checked, providing the full context. So a headline that just regurgitates what they say, it does give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think maybe that's what you're referring to.
And that right there, for instance, on the screen right now, it says Trump's hoax tweet was a reference to collusion. Well, it's not like there's a footnote in that actual tweet. I know you're not on Twitter anymore, but there wasn't a footnote in the tweet from the president where he's saying, by the way, I'm talking about collusion, not the whole Russia investigation.
No, and
he is quite intentionally, and you've noted this before, he chooses language that can mean a whole lot of different things to a whole lot of different
Yes, and then you have to present him with this menu of options to try to figure out what exactly he's talking about. But in the meantime, what happens is we all repeat no collusion, no hoax. So I don't think it's the benefit of the doubt so much as only so many hours in the day to catch up to these things. And I think that we don't always do the most thorough job that we can, just collectively as the news media, putting in full context what this is.
I agree. The fire hose of news makes us speak in a shorthand.
Right.
I agree with that. But it is interesting to hear the press secretary just start to say hoax. I mean, to use the word hoax.
Right. Although, I mean, I think that, again, it's one of these things that he does. He's clever about how he deals with the media, and he knows that if he says the word hoax, we will now be saying no hoax, no collusion over and over again. And he is aware that that is something that a fair number of voters will just make that their takeaway.
Maggie Haberman, thank you so much for coming on. Really, this is one of the only places that you can get Maggie, in addition to the New York Times, get her here on CNN, because no longer on Twitter.
Not the way I was, anyway.
Not the way you were. So that's why you have to tune in, Maggie. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.